Yeah, I was just trying to get the 89.9 in my head. Yeah.
So is it acting police chief?
Deputy chief.
Deputy
I'm
chief.
acting deputy.
Okay. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. And your
John Fairley, currently the acting deputy chief, Circleville Police Department.
Excuse me.
So the control boxes that we currently had in the wrong ones are dials. We've never had dials. It's always been a switch and buttons. So for me, who's been doing this 20 years, if I get in, I'm like, what is this? It's a dial. You're talking fumbling now, time frame, seconds matter. So that was why they had to go get re-outfitted. It was because we've never had those control boxes ever. So the safety issue is if I get into a car that I'm not familiar with, I've now got to familiarize myself with that car. But like the mayor said, if we had individual cars that we're assigned to, the control box wouldn't matter because that'd be your car. You're familiar with that car. You're familiar with the shotguns. You're familiar with the trunk storage. The three that came down had the wrong trunk storage, the wrong shotgun mounts, the wrong less lethal mounts. You're talking all kinds of safety issues that if I get into a car that I'm not familiar with and I'm looking for the less lethal and I grab the shotgun instead, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
That's
So
a big problem.
I appreciate the explanation, and you don't have to sell me on that. I completely get the safety piece. I mean, I have a construction company. We outfit all of our vehicles the same for efficiency. I can't even speak to the safety thing.
Right.
So I fully get that. I think my frustration, and I'm speaking for these a little bit, is like, well, we have a $90,000 unexpected bill because someone did something wrong and didn't tell anybody.
Absolutely. And when they showed up like that, we were kind of like, what is this? We didn't know what it was because it wasn't what we were used to.
Yeah.
So that's why I think they had to go back, was because when we start realizing nobody was familiar with these control boxes or where everything was, they had to go back. Now, as far as the safety issue, I'll give you an example. Today we had two cruisers down. One had two flat tires because they had screws in them, and one had a weird knocking noise. So at that point, we're low on cruisers. That cruiser that has the wrong control box is sometimes the only option we have to get guys on the road because we're low on cruisers. So it's either you don't have a cruiser out or you take the cruiser that you have available, which has the wrong outfitting. Luckily, the tires got fixed within an hour and we got it back in service, but things happen. Cars break down. So I think the fleet program is probably a great thing because we spent tons of money on cars that probably should have never spent money on. I mean, we've put engines in cruisers that, why are we putting an engine in a car?
Yeah.
Whereas with the fleet program, I think we could just say, you know what, we're done with this one, let's get a new one.
Yeah.
It was a mess for a while.
What's the timing on? I like the idea of the one that we haven't fixed yet, making that part of the system. We don't have to fix it, but what's the timing on that? Do we have anything on that?
So we just met with Ross. We met with him on Friday afternoon, this past Friday. And so they talked about the vehicles that we were looking at, possibly selling, having them sell for us. So we talked about that, and it's about even between service and safety in terms of vehicles requested.
And I would assume all this that we're talking about now, those discussions are going on with fleet, so they're upfitted the correct way.
Yes, I asked it on council floor, and I also asked it in our individual meeting with him as far as making sure that we had a proper schematic to give to the people who do that,
Good.
that it looks the same.
Super.
And I can only make assumptions. I don't know if the thought was, as we got new cruisers, we would go with a new outfitting or upfitting to go with this newer vendor and the way that they did it, because looking at the price, it is cheaper.
But that couldn't have been the thought if they were resent, though.
I'm assuming.
Well, they weren't done and sent by the same person.
But I'm also assuming some of that 23,000 is tearing everything out. You're not starting with a fresh.
Yeah.
So you've got labor tearing everything else. That could be why there's a little bit more cost on DNC, because they're not starting with a fresh canvas.
So just to clarify, though, the acting chief at the time is who had to get them outfitted. The previous chief is who sent them to be refitted.
Yes.
And again, just I'm concerned about the cruiser that's going to be dangerous for you to use when you got a flat tire on the one you want to use.
So luckily that cruiser, if I recall correctly, is only driven by the supervisors.
Yes, it's an
so
OIC.
It's only the three supervisors, first, second, and third shift supervisors are the only ones that drive that one. So luckily it's three guys.
The timing is not as big of an issue.
So luckily it's three guys that know that car pretty well.
Well, and the car's been there since 2022, it sounds like.
I think this is one of the newer ones.
There were a couple of, I think it's one of the ones that came in 23. Because while these ordinances were passed in 21 and 22, the supply
Yeah, sure.
issue and getting them, and then the time frame that it took to get some of these cars outfitted, I believe we got some of these cruisers in September of last year is when they first were put on the road.
Any other questions for the mayor or for Deputy Chief Fairley?
And I will just tell you that these invoices were something that came to me in the beginning of February, and I asked for the details of what had happened in order to bring to council to ask you to allocate this money.
Yeah, no, and I certainly appreciate that. And I appreciate the position that all of you are in with this situation. And I definitely understand and respect the safety piece of it. My concern, which I've shared with you, is it's like there's a $90,000 bill that no one expected to get in light of, asking, on the precipice of asking for citizens to support the levy again. That's very frustrating, which I know is completely out of your hands. And we need to put that aside and do what's right for the department, which I think obviously we have no choice but to move forward with this.
Correct. But I think if we go with the fleet program, maybe you just don't outfit it and leave it as an individual. This person drives that.
Yeah,
car.
for the fifth
Yeah,
one.
timing's
Yeah,
pretty close on that. Yeah.
or the third one.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, sir. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to forward this on to our next council meeting on June the 4th with recommendation for adoption.
Okay, so Jeff Hallinan made a recommendation for adoption to go to council on June 4th. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tom Duval. Melissa, can we please do a roll call?
Duval,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Hallinan.
Yes.
Okay, so that will move forward. Okay, second piece, Melissa, you want to go ahead and read this for us?
An ordinance enacting a section 135.13 to the codified ordinances of the city of Circleville, establishing certain part-time positions within the police department and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. So this came as a request from the mayor. And I understand this is part of a previous ordinance that I believe went through in 2023, and this is just the funding component. I have a couple of questions about it, and we'll open it up to other questions. One of my questions is, what is the lag from the time that we did this in 2023? Why is it just now being asked to be funded?
That's a great question. I don't know why the funding wasn't included in it from 2023 when it was done. Usually, as we've seen with positions that we have added this year, there has been the conversation about whether the funding for that was through the comp plan or if it was salaries, whether it was included in the budget for that year as well. But I can't tell you that. I wasn't part of those conversations. This was just brought up as we were looking at the planner position and how the salary for the planner was determined, that we needed to also look at this ordinance. This ordinance was also evaluated by multiple people throughout the administration, to my understanding. Again, I wasn't there at the time, but it was reviewed by multiple people, but not all the components were considered when it was brought to council before, and it includes some of these people, some of these pieces. I'm sorry, does that answer your question? Okay, the other pieces were the appointments for these specific positions were, in the original ordinance, were done by the chief of police. Their applications were to go to the chief of police. Those things were changed as they're now reflected to the director of human resources, where all other applications for the city currently goes for positions. And then you'll also see that they have the same qualifications as full-time positions within the department. And then the compensation, the letter E is a big component of this ordinance being brought before you this evening.
Okay, so letter E, compensation. Part-time employees within the police department shall be paid in accordance with the established pay scale set forth in various union contracts for positions and of the same classification. Part-time employees are non-union, non-civil service positions and shall receive no fringe benefits or pension funds of the city or the state of Ohio or any similar benefits.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the foregoing, part-time positions within the police department shall be entitled to any and all relief under the Ohio Workers' Compensation other than the compensation pay rate. No other benefits from the union apply to this position. So you're saying that was an ad?
There's some language in here, specifically the part about in various union contracts for positions of the same classification, the pay scale. That was not in there before. And so basically what this does is it prepares us if we have a part-time employee that if there's a full-time position available, they go right into that position with the pay. It's already expected what that pay is going to be as they become a full-time employee.
If they make the transition.
If they make the transition from part-time to full-time.
So since this was approved in 2023, no part-time people have been hired, I'm assuming, since
No.
the funding piece wasn't?
We have one communications officer that was looking to go part-time.
From full-time to
From full-time to part-time. And then we have one former officer who is looking to possibly become part-time. But we couldn't move forward with it because these pieces weren't in place.
But with the qualifications, then I can go from part-time to full-time with no further.
Yes, because they're required to have the same qualifications as a part-time officer that a full-time officer would have. And that also protects us as the city.
Questions? Other comments?
So this is not really, so from the finance standpoint, you were saying earlier that nothing's kind of been prepared to it?
Well, it's my understanding that in conversations last year, there was some money put in the budget for part-time positions. Is that accurate?
There was, yeah, we had I was actually trying to find it here, how many people we had put in there to be available to pay. It seems like me, it was maybe 5, not the full 10, making the assumption because of that at the time when that was passed, that we wouldn't have been able to add that many people in that shorter period of time. I'd have to look and see what I did for this year to find out. But even if it was just the same, even at this time of the year, we're still only 6 months remaining. So even if I did only do the 5 people again, 5 part-time people, we would still have enough money to cover that. But again, I don't want to look, I don't want to tell you that until I get the actual.
But last year when this was needed, from the time we did it last year to current, no one has been hired.
That is correct, yes.
So did this come back for the funding piece to correct the issues, or did it come back because you have a list of people you want to hire part-time?
I think it's both. And we couldn't hire anybody because the funding piece wasn't there. Like the language for compensation wasn't there.
Questions or comments?
How does this interface with our levy?
Well, I mean,
You know where I'm going, right?
yeah. So while we have these positions available, we don't have to fill them.
I think, and again, I'm speaking for you, but my concern again is we have, against everybody's will, I think, put a lot of money into the citizens' hands for money that had to have been paid out for the police department that has absolutely nothing to do with anything the police department and the people that serve in it did. But it is a fact there's been a lot of money that has been paid out for ending relationships and for police cruisers that got outfitted twice and whatever. And I absolutely think that you two and others are absolutely trying to do the right thing. I think to Tom's point, it's tough when this was told to us last year, this is so needed and nothing got filled. And suddenly now, when you're going to take the police chief's position out to the outside, when you don't have a safety director, now we're going to make like hiring changes when it just seems, the timing, I guess, just seems odd to me. All that to say that we're not running the police department, we're financing this ordinance. But in the back of my mind, I'm also trying to keep in mind what's the right financial thing for the citizens as we ask them to support the levy again, which I think we all agree is desperately needed.